Hi, this is Ellen from the Chili Dog. Like most knitters, I hate weaving in yarn tails. So when my friend Mary taught me how to be successful with the Russian join, I was delighted and amazed. It pretty much eliminates all of your yarn tails except at the cast on and bind off. The basic idea of the Russian join is to wrap your old yarn and your new yarn around each other. Then you can seal these yarn tails by using a needle to weave the tail back into the yarn. The join adds just a slight bit of bulk to your yarn for a few stitches, but it's very secure. All you need to do the Russian join is a blunt tapestry needle and possibly a pair of scissors. One problem I previously had with the Russian join is that these blunt cut ends always seem to pop out of the join no matter how much I trim them. That problem can pretty much be eliminated if the yarn tail is tapered on the end instead of being blunt. For some fibers, you can just pull your yarn and break it instead of cutting it, and that creates this nice tapered end. However, some fibers just don't break easily, either because of the fiber content or how thick they are. In that case, you can just wrap the yarn around your thumb and then maybe again a little bit around your index finger and hold the ends secure. Grab your scissors and just slightly fray the yarn with the blade of your scissors. Once the yarn is frayed a little bit, then you can go ahead and pull and break it, and then just use your fingers to taper out that end. After the ends of both your old and new yarns are tapered, you're ready to join. And I'm going to be demonstrating today on the project that's actually on my knitting needles, an Omo Mobius shawl. So thread your old yarn onto the tapestry needle, and then you want to cross the old yarn around the new yarn. And at this point, it doesn't matter where along the new yarn that you're making that join because it'll be able to move around later. And let's zoom in so you can watch this closely. I want to weave in the tail of my old yarn back into itself. So I'm going to slide my needle down close to the end of the tail, but not all the way. I don't want it to fall off. And then I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to lift just one ply of the old yarn and go from front to back. And the join only needs to be 1 inch or 2 long. So I usually just go about a needle's length to find that first ply. And as you can see here, the new yarn is going in that loop. It's caught in there. So for a bulkier yarn with more plies, it's possible that you could just push your tapestry needle up through the center of the yarn. However, today I'm demonstrating on 2-ply yarn so we can see and understand the process a little bit better. So to go right up the center of that yarn, you're going to bring your needle tip forward so that it's parallel to the next ply, and then go under just 1 ply of the yarn. I caught a little bit there. Again, bring your needle tip forward so that it's parallel with the next ply, and then under just 1 ply of the yarn. Forward so that it's parallel to the ply, and then under just 1 ply. And you can see here now the needle is right at the center of the yarn and all the plies are wrapped around it. So you're going to continue on going under just 1 ply at a time until your needle is all full up. To minimize the possibility of having this yarn tail pop out at the end, you want to make sure that your needle is nice and tightly packed with yarn up here. You want to go a lot further than what you think the length of this yarn tail is going to be. So once you have gone far enough, you're going to pull the needle through the yarn. And then once the needle is through, you can pull it all the way and find the end. And then you can take your needle off of the yarn. Pull the join down the tail, and this just tightens it up around that new yarn. And once it's nice and tight, hold the new yarn, and then you're gently going to take your fingers and stretch out and pull the old yarn, and it just conceals that tail inside the center of the yarn. And now you can barely even see it, and it adds just a tiny bit of thickness to the yarn. But when you're working a couple stitches, you're not even going to notice that. So now you do the exact same thing with your new yarn. You would slide it down so that the join here is a few inches, a couple inches away from the tail. Put your needle onto the new yarn and then thread it down through the center of your new yarn to join on the other side. Sometimes because of the type of fiber you're using or how tightly your yarn is plied, or even the size of the needle that you have handy when you're doing your join, weaving the tail through the exact center of the yarn can be tricky. In that case, you can try this alternative. And again, let's zoom in so you can see it closely. Instead of trying to go through the exact center of the yarn, you can use a simple running stitch instead. So just like before, I'm going to put my needle down through the yarn just on the other side of where I want the join to be, about a needle's length away from the end of my new yarn this time. But I'm not going to worry so much about trying to pick up just a single ply. Instead, I'm just going to use a running stitch and go down and up and down and up through my yarn. And again, you don't have to worry about catching every ply. It's okay if you pierce the yarn or don't go under a ply exactly. You're just doing a running stitch right down the center of the yarn. Just like before, it's better to go further than you think you need to, just so that this yarn tail doesn't pop out later. So make sure again that your needle is just packed tight with stitches. Then, just like before, you're going to pull the yarn through, take your needle off, pull on the tail, just to make sure that this join is nice and secure around the other yarn, and then hold the other yarn. In this case, this is my old yarn, and slide your fingers down the new yarn, and it straightens out the yarn and again conceals the join. And if we look up close, it's not quite as neat as the other join, but sometimes it works just fine for what you're doing. And let's take a quick look at some samples I did this way just to compare the two. On this side of all three of them, I went right down the center of the yarn, so you can just see the plies of the yarn and the tail is concealed on the inside. And then on the other side, I actually just did a running stitch to hide the yarn. And again, it's not quite as neat, but sometimes good is good enough. Now I'm ready to continue knitting my Omo shawl. And since I used the Russian join to add my second ball of yarn, I won't have a yarn tail to weave in here later. I hope you enjoyed learning how to do the Russian join, and if you did, make sure to subscribe to my channel, The Chili Dog, for more fiber tips and tutorials. Until we stitch again, happy knitting!